We have our two mayoral candidates today, and to moderate this portion of the event, I'm going to introduce Matt Safransky. Take it away.
I am Matt Safransky. I'm the editor of Western Mass Politics and Insight. I want to thank the organizers of this debate to give me the opportunity to moderate, and I'd also like to thank the candidates for appearing today. I do want to let you know there will be, as we suggested, a slight change to the format. Because we do only have two candidates, we're going to do a little bit more back and forth. So first candidate will answer a question. Second candidate will have 2 minutes. The second candidate will have 1 minute, 2 minutes to respond, and then there'll be a 1 minute response that each candidate has the option of taking after that. So there'll be a little bit more back and forth for each question. We will introduce the candidates. On the right, we have Alex Morse, and on our left, we have Dan Soskiewicz. I'm sorry, I pronounced that the Polish way. Soskiewicz. I have one of those names, I should know better. All right, so let's get to it. First question, we're also going to start off in alphabetical order, which means we will start with Alex Morse. Opening statements, I'm sorry, opening statements. It's my first time doing this, folks, I apologize. Opening statements, we'll start with Alex Morse, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to the independent media panel. Also, a big thanks to Mr. Soskiewicz for agreeing to be at tonight's debate. I do wish that the other three candidates for mayor were here tonight because all of you here today and all of you at home do deserve a debate on the issues. And it is an honor for me to be here tonight because I'm proud of the record that I have over the past year and a half. I'm excited about looking forward over the next 2-year term. It's been an incredible honor for me to have this position over the past 2 years. And as I said, I'm looking forward to continuing in this position because we have a lot more work to do. And so tonight, I'm very, very excited to talk about all the exciting things happening in the city of Holyoke, be it in education, economic development, public safety, with my guiding light being instilling civic pride in people who live and work here in the city of Holyoke. Just a brief snapshot, and I know we'll get into specifics throughout the debate. But in terms of economic development and the stability of our city's finances, I'm very, very happy to report that the city's finances are in better shape than when I took office. I know many of you folks read the paper, and in conjunction with our city treasurer, we recently set the record for the seizure of back taxes in the city as one example of strengthening the city's finances. Early on in my administration, I pushed for a new tax incentive program, a 20-year TIF, or tax increment financing plan, to both keep business here and attract new business to the city of Holyoke. And we've also made key public investments in the downtown to catalyze private activity and also an intense focus on the creative economy. In education, as chairman of the school committee, I've made it a priority to make sure that the Holyoke public schools are the schools of choice for all of our parents in the city. And that's been an important goal of mine, is to make sure that no matter what neighborhood you live in, what you look like, or what language you speak, you're going to get a great education in the Holyoke public schools. I've made early literacy a major priority. When I took office, only 1 in every 4 of our third graders were proficient in reading. And that's a huge indicator of whether or not a young person is going to graduate from high school later on in life. And so I convened the United Way and the Davis Foundation and created a position called the Early Literacy Coordinator to make sure that parents are reading to their kids 20 minutes a day. And I'm proud of the fact that I led the school committee to hire a new school superintendent that just started on July 1st and comes to us from Worcester with a great personal and educational background that makes me more optimistic about the future of the public schools, more so than I ever have been before. And in public safety, the city is the safest it's been in years. Last year, as many of you know, was the city's first homicide-free year in over 25 years. And we've made strategic investments in the police department to make sure our crime stats are going down. And 2 years ago, I promised to implement community policing, and I'm happy to say we've done that. We've increased the relationship between the residents and the community. We've opened up substations. We got officers back on bike patrol and foot patrol. And we've done many other things, including a canine unit in the police department. And again, I'm happy that people are moving back to Holyoke and coming back to Holyoke. And I look forward to your questions tonight. Thank you.
My name is Dan Soskiewicz. I had the pleasure of serving as mayor of Holyoke 1996 to 1999. And it is my pleasure to be at this debate this evening. While I hold the other 3 candidates for mayor in the highest regard, in fact, Alex and I were with them this afternoon for a televised debate on TV 22, which will air this Sunday at noon. we were discussing whether or not they were coming tonight or not. And I said to them, if the standard is going to be that you cannot participate in a political event because of bias in this city, I would never be able to leave my house. Everybody's for somebody. And I commend all of the Moore supporters in the room, whoever you're for. I think it's great that you're part of the political process. My wife, Deborah, in the front row, and I moved back to Holyoke after me living out of town for a few years earlier this year. And being somewhat astute in politics, I wasn't going to jump into the mayoral race right away. I hadn't had a political machine together with volunteers and so forth, but I started receiving phone calls from former elected officials, current elected officials, civic leaders, government leaders saying they're afraid Holyoke's moving in the wrong direction. And after listening and after seeing the whole divide between the new Holyoke and the old Holyoke and some of the decisions that were being made, I was compelled to put my name on the ballot and offer my candidacy for mayor once again. I'm very concerned about the message that the city is sending to the business community and to the other communities in Western Massachusetts. While I commend Alex and have the highest amount of respect for him, serving as mayor is a very difficult job. I was on the city council for 6 years, and then when I took office as mayor, at age 28, I think he beat me on being the youngest mayor, so I already lost to him in that one. But it still took me 6 months to figure out the job after 6 years in office. And knowing how much is going on right now and how difficult it is making decisions, and decisions that you're making will have an impact long term. The casino issue, the Walmart issue, there's so many issues that are just creating a lot of problems in this city that I don't think we should or need to be addressing. And I bet if I asked the people in this room to raise their hand and say, does everybody know what the levy ceiling is? It's probably a very, former Mayor Plute is in the back raising her hand. She knows what that is. It's a very serious issue. With Proposition 2.5, this city is running out of its ability to raise revenue locally under Proposition 2.5. We have to be so careful about what we do. The limited amount of parcels we have left, our development. I want to offer my leadership once again. I had 4 years as mayor, balanced budget, increased services, and no increase in taxes. So I would ask everybody for your fair consideration tonight, whether or not you're wearing a sticker for somebody else, at least give me the decency to listen, let me make my argument. Thank you.
All right, our first question comes from the public, and it will go to Dan. What are the strengths and weaknesses that you see in the Holyoke Public Schools, and what is your vision for them over a 2-year term?
We were discussing that this afternoon. The Holyoke Public Schools, there's 2 things that are of great concern to me right now. Number 1 is the Dean Vocational School. Looking at its lack of accreditation and the current state that it's in, it's heartbreaking, especially when a lot of what the recent debates have been about job creation. Holyoke has always been lucky in that we have had a strong manufacturing base. And when you have a vocational school right in your city in which you are supposed to work with the local manufacturing base and create jobs and create a skilled workforce, why that's not happening, I don't know. And that's very disappointing to me. And secondly, as the custodial parent of a 15-year-old autistic son, when we moved back to Holyoke, he was enrolled in the Center for Excellence, I believe, the former Lawrence School. My wife has been an educational attorney for years as well. How one is able to pool all of the special education children in one location and get away with it is absolutely amazing to me. So I'm a little confused by that, but there is no excuse for Holyoke Public Schools not to be superb, considering that over 90% of their budget since I was in office comes from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It should never have been a matter of resources. I want to spend as much time as I did during my former tenure serving as chairman of the school committee, attending the meetings. I used to visit the schools once a week, talk to the principals. It's one of those issues where you have to get out there in the trenches and see what's actually going on, because a lot of the children in the Holyoke Public School system do not get the support they need at home, and I would always support breakfast programs, after-school programs, anything we can do to keep these kids as safe and as productive as possible. Thanks.
That's a great question. The quality of the public schools here in the city of Holyoke. As many of you know, I'm a proud product of the public schools. I went to Morgan Elementary in South Holyoke. Peck Middle School, and Holyoke High School. And I went out to Brown University, and unlike many college graduates, actually chose to come back to the city of Holyoke and make sure that opportunity was available to other young people in the city of Holyoke. And that's what we've been able to do. I also look at my niece and nephew, Nathan and Lauren, who are in the 3rd grade and the 6th grade at Sullivan School here in the city of Holyoke. And I commend my brother and sister-in-law for believing in the public schools, as my family has for many, many years. Because, as I said, my job is to make sure that the Holyoke Public School is a school of choice for all parents in the public schools. And that won't be easy. It will be difficult. We do have our challenges. And a topic like education, it moves slowly. And in a 2-year cycle, we want to see data. We implement new programs, we get new grants, and we want to see results. But it's been an immense opportunity as chairman of the school committee to guide that direction. Over the past year and a half, we've secured $6.3 million to renovate the science laboratories at Dean Vocational High School, and we're just about to do an unveiling with State Treasurer Steve Grossman to unveil that investment at Dean Voc High School. Over the past year, I've also co-chaired the Dean Futures Advisory Committee to make sure we do an intense analysis of the shops we currently provide at Dean, either eliminate them if they're obsolete and we're not training them for the jobs that are available today or in the future economy, to make sure we are linking back with the manufacturers in the city of Holyoke, and we've already begun that partnership. I've talked about the literacy initiative, making sure all of our 3rd graders are on 3rd grade level when they enter the 4th grade, because again, that is a very big indicator. But again, one of the big challenges we have in the city of Holyoke Public Schools are expectations and perception. And again, I think we can do a much better job of making sure that the perception of the public schools is a good one. And so I'm looking forward to working closely with Dr. Sergio Paez to make sure that parents are looking at the public schools as their #1 choice, because we have great teachers, great administrators, and great parents.
Do you support the continued operation of Tapestry Health's needle exchange? If yes, do you believe the city needs to take a greater role in mitigating perceived impacts of the needle exchange on neighbors, some of whom still complain of drug activity near their homes and businesses? What specific steps should the city take? If you don't support the needle exchange, what is your vision for working to reduce rates of HIV infection in Holyoke and mitigating the impacts of the illegal drug trade on Holyoke's residents?
Thank you for that question. I think the question around needle exchange is a great example of the importance of taking a leadership position on a difficult issue. I'm well aware of the fact that voters many, many years ago, I think by a margin of 65% or 35%, voted in a non-binding referendum to vote against the implementation of a needle exchange program. But I look back and I think about why I ran for the position of mayor, and I didn't run to take a poll of the voters every time I make a decision. I ran for this office because I need to wake up in the morning believing in the decisions that I make. And so not everything will be popular, but it will be the right thing to do for our community. And I'm not a public health expert, and so when it comes to making a decision about public health, I want to talk to the experts. I want to do the research. And what I found looking at needle exchange is that it's the most effective harm reduction tool to reduce the transmission of HIV and hepatitis C among IV drug users in our community. And when I took the oath of office on January 3rd of 2012, I pledged to make sure that the citizens of Holyoke are safe and healthy. And if there's anything I can do about it, I will do that. And so that's why I took the courageous action to implement a needle exchange program in the city of Holyoke. I'm happy to report that a year later, a year from its operation, Tapestry Health, working with other agencies, have collected more needles off our streets than they've distributed. Our parks are cleaner than they've ever been, with minimal amounts of needles in that park. And again, the needle exchange program is much more than distributing needles to folks. It's about connecting people who need it most to drug rehabilitation programs in the city. And the majority of those using the needle exchange program are actually Holyoke residents. And so we're connecting Holyoke residents to drug treatment programs and making sure they are safe here in the city. And again, the needle exchange program is part of a larger effort to make sure that needles are out of public places, out of public parks. We've just announced that we have a needle drop-off location at the DPW downtown. We also have one here for our city seniors who are diabetic to drop their needles off here. And we're currently offering free needle baskets to our city residents to make sure they can safely dispose of their needles. Thank you.
This is an issue where I think Alex and I would disagree. Ever since I was on the city council in the 1990s, this has been a political issue, and quite frankly, my position is the state chickened out by taking a public health issue and making it a political issue. If they had just legislated it, done it, and left it off of the political process, you could probably do what the mayor's been talking about. But why hold a referendum and why ask the voters of the city what their position is, have them vote, and then turn around and say, well, too bad, I'm doing it anyways. I can't support that. While I certainly respect the medical science behind it, the logic to it, the legislature set it up that it requires the referendum, the local support. The people said no, therefore I would not support it. I would not support a needle exchange unless and until the voters did.
Yeah, I would just clarify again that the needle exchange is not a political issue, and I oftentimes laugh at the fact that I have to discuss needle exchange in a political environment, because at the heart of the matter is we're talking about people's lives and livelihood and health in a political format. And one of the reasons I went down the route I did to implement the program in the way I did is because I wanted to take people's lives and health out of a political environment and just talk about public health. To be frank, the city has a Board of Health Commission for a reason. They're appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. I had the opportunity to appoint the most recent member, Patty Murdy's, another health expert in the city, to that board, and two previous commissioners, Bob Mazel and Katie Liptak, three respectable people who looked at the research, the data, and made an educated decision to vote 3-0. All of these commissioners had been confirmed by the city council, and so again, we should leave the health issues to the health experts, and that's the Board of Health.
Next question goes to you, Dan. What do you see as both positive and negative about the Walmart project, and why?
I'll say what I said this afternoon on the 22 debate. This is the most frustrating issue of this election cycle for me by a mile. The Walmart plan is a bad idea for Holyoke. Again, I'll go all the way back to my tenure in the late 1990s. That parcel of land was owned by the Holyoke Gas and Electric. And we were very thoughtful about how we were going to develop it. As I stated in my opening statement, the city's approaching levee ceiling. That is one of the last available open parcels of land we have. We have to maximize the development. The thought was that because the gas and electric owns the property, when they put out requests for proposals, it wouldn't just be who wants to buy this, but they could put restrictions on it to make sure that it would be a manufacturer, so that not only would the city recover property taxes from the building, but also the machinery and the equipment. Before I left office, the last company that looked at it was a company named Sudicor, a German manufacturer that ended up out in the industrial park in Agawam. Imagine the difference in the property taxes to this city with a manufacturer like Sudicor up there versus a big empty box called Walmart. Secondly, you have to think about the gain versus the loss. Yes, you get a building there. Yes, you get taxes. You get some minimum wage jobs. Say goodbye to CVS up the street, the Kmart Plaza, the Stop and Shop down below. Now you have this big empty building down there. Holyoke has to be careful. You can't just take whatever comes to you. And I guess, with all due respect to Alex again, last October and November, he was approaching city councilors asking for them to support the Walmart plan. And the only reason they're still here is because they bought the property. They're investing money. They're not going to turn around. A mayor needs to take a position at the beginning and stick with it. Those are the issues that got me into this race.
The Walmart question's a great question, and I think it's important to lay out the fact that I was elected mayor not to represent corporate interests or to represent Walmart, but to represent, frankly, the people who live in the city of Holyoke, the people who own homes, the people who rent here, who live here, who call Holyoke their home, be it people, be it businesses in that area who have given so much to our community over the years. I think people deserve a mayor that keeps an open mind, that doesn't dig their heels in every time someone disagrees with them, someone that is willing to have a healthy debate about the future of the city of Holyoke. And I've been that mayor on many, many issues. I'm open to speaking both to homeowners, to business owners, to make sure I have an educated opinion about an issue. And the issue of Walmart, I did my due diligence for several weeks, meeting with business owners and homeowners all across the city, not just in the Whiting Farms area. And the resounding message, door knocking every single day in every neighborhood of the city, is that Holyoke can do better, and Holyoke is doing better. And I think the underlying question is why are we holding new prospects accountable to a level we never have been before? And I think that's because things are going well in the city of Holyoke. We've raised the bar, we've raised expectations for the type of development and the type of jobs we want in the city of Holyoke. And so I appreciate, I see many homeowners here who live across where that parcel would be, and I thank them for taking an active role in democracy, because my job as mayor is to be accountable to all of you here today. And so you have someone who listens, someone who's open-minded, and someone who has the best interests of Holyoke in the long term in mind. And so again, I thank you for being here, and thank you for educating me.
This issue is one I definitely want to take another minute on again. If I ask for a showing of hands, how many people have a Stop Walmart sign on their lawn right now? How many people are in the email army of stopping Walmart against it? It shouldn't even be happening. Again, I respect the open-mindedness and so forth, but the mayor was in favor of it in the first announcement. As soon as it said Walmart was coming, he had positive comments about it. Once a company buys the property, does the planning, does the development, they're not going to turn around. That has to be done at the beginning. And again, potential businesses, if any of you own businesses or would own businesses, would you want to come into a community where the mayor says, come on in? Well, maybe not. A few months later, yes, no. That is what concerns me the most. I think Alex is a very intelligent person. It's the ability to make a decision at the right time, stick with it, and make sure that it's in the best interests of the city.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what I said before. I think we need stable, consistent, visionary leadership in the mayor's office. That's what I've provided. I've demonstrated that I'm a listener. I listen to anybody who comes to my office. I go out into the community. I've been knocking on doors for several months now, talking to people directly about the issues important to them. And the issue with Walmart, economic development should not be a zero-sum proposition. We shouldn't be trading some jobs for other jobs. And again, we shouldn't resign ourselves to an economy on the backs of people in our city and across the world. And I think, again, we can do better. We are doing better. We're leveraging the investment of the computing center in the downtown and what's called our Art and Innovation District, seeing an influx of new companies, both startup companies and existing companies from other places throughout Western Massachusetts. And I think folks realize we have an intense focus on the downtown, on the creative economy, on bolstering small businesses, which nationally, small businesses create 80% of all new jobs in our economy. And so that's what we're focusing on, is making sure that people can afford to put food on the table at night.
We have a bit of a follow-up question to that in light of some of the more recent news that came out today. We'll go first to Alex. Does the recent announcement of Big Y withdrawing from a project in Holyoke have any effect on your stance with regard to Walmart?
No, I think when I spoke at Donahue a few weeks ago with homeowners and union members, some sisters from the Sisters of Providence, I made it very clear that Walmart uniquely was harmful to the city of Holyoke, and I stand by that position. Like many Holyokers, I'm disappointed in the news about Big Y, but I respect the rationale for their decision. Just a few weeks ago, working with the City Council, we just completed the takings to widen the intersection on Lower Westfield Road and Homestead Road, and that project was to begin when those traffic improvements happen. And so number one, we are moving forward with those traffic improvements to widen that intersection, because we do still plan on partnering with O'Connell Development for a retail project at that site with Big Y or without Big Y. As many of you recall, there was a second retail complex across the parking lot from the proposed Big Y, and I know O'Connell Development is moving forward to identify another tenant for that space. Also, right down the road, we're working very closely with Holyoke Hotel and Friendly's, a redevelopment project that includes 2 new hotels and 3 to 4 pad restaurants outside of the Holyoke Mall. And so we're focusing development in that area, but again, we respect their decision. We as a municipality have done everything we can to create the economic conditions where people want to invest. And I mentioned earlier before the new tax increment financing plan that I pushed through the City Council with their support early last year. Before I took office, just to give you a sense, the city was held to a 5-year tax incentive financing program. So a new company or an existing company would pay the tax incrementally over a 5-year period. And given that we have one of the highest commercial tax rates in the entire state, it was important to have a more significant incentive for businesses to come to Holyoke. And so we quickly expanded that up to a 20-year period. And companies like US Sabaki will do a $6 million expansion. We'll kick that off later this month. Sealer Corporation, right across from the Atlas Copco site, recently did an expansion in Holyoke and closed a small plant in New Jersey. And so we are moving forward in economic development with or without it.
The first part is, would the Big Y decision impact my position on Walmart? Absolutely not. Second part is the whole issue of what we're doing with the properties that we have control over and we don't have control over along the I-91 corridor. I said this back during my prior tenure as well. The city planners in the 1960s made a little bit of a mistake when they had I-91 go cruising up through Ingleside in our residential areas instead of following the path of 391 through downtown, which would have given us a lot better opportunity in developing downtown. I had said back then, and I still stand by it now, whether it's the Lynch School, Anniversary School, Scotts Tower, Community Field, there is so much state-owned land up along I-91 that we should be asking the state, asking our state rep and senator to start passing legislation to free that up, give it to us, and develop that property in any capacity, whether it's residential, commercial, whatnot. Holyoke has all of its schools and civic institutions like fire stations off the interstate, and that's the prime development property that we would need. We should and could move those. Where I think Alex and I disagree again, I believe he wanted to put the charter school in the Lynch School at the beginning, and I would be all about selling it. It's up there now. Move the schools away from the highways. Those are the last chance we have to develop and make some serious money on property taxes and new investment. We could put all the non-for-profits further away from the interstate. Thank you.
Last fall, I presented to the council what's called an urban renewal plan, and it's a sweeping plan for the downtown 4 neighborhoods, and it's actually parcelized. And so every single city-owned property, abandoned property, vacant property has a particular use in it, be it industrial, commercial, retail, residential. As you know, the last time the city did a public auction was 1976, and so working in conjunction with our city treasurer, the city did its first public auction right here at the Holyoke Senior Center. We have people driving up from New York City, from Connecticut, from all across New England to buy property in Holyoke. Number one, putting it in the hands of a private developer. Number two, getting it back on the tax rolls. And number three, having a positive benefit and action to the community. And we're planning on doing our second public auction in December. And so we're moving forward to make sure we have a specific plan in that sense. Regarding land in the 91 corridor, we're working very closely with the Secretary Sullivan at the state level to make sure we can find replacement parkland for Anniversary Field to make that a more attractive site for redevelopment.
I'm just going to follow the tangent Alex just took about abandoned property, not down there. I just want everyone to look out the window across the street and remind everybody of what happened over there. If you've lived in Holyoke long enough and you remember what Jackson Parkway used to look like, and look at what's over there now, the Hope 6 development. Now that happened with the help of Ray Murphy, the Holyoke Housing Authority, during my administration in the late 1990s, and that right there is the pinnacle of private investment, public investment. Almost $50 million of investment in Holyoke. And not only does it look nice, but the crime rate, de minimis at this point in time. It wasn't rocket science. It was mixing low-income market rental home ownership together like that. I was able to get Holyoke money with, again, Ray and the Housing Authority's help with San Francisco, Baltimore, Phoenix, and little old Holyoke. It's outlooks like that. It's looking for ideas like that that I think really would make a big difference in our community.
Mayor Morris mentioned a little earlier that he made a somewhat unusual decision to come back to Holyoke after graduating from college. Certainly, bringing young professionals, young people into Holyoke is an important part of the city's economic revitalization. We have 50,000 plus college students in the Pioneer Valley. I'm wondering, what would you gentlemen say to a recent college graduate about what opportunities are available to them, what amenities are here in Holyoke, and why would you encourage them to consider making Holyoke their home?
I think there's a first answer, which is if you're born in Holyoke, raised in Holyoke, I think it's almost an instinct that you're going to come back to Holyoke after college, because I think almost everybody does. It's in you and you can't leave that quickly. I think the big issue is jobs. You have to make sure that when you graduate from college, if you come back here and you're not just living with mom and dad, that you have somewhere to work, and there's at least it's somewhere close to work. I do believe that our housing stock is competitive in Western Massachusetts right now. I believe culturally, there's a lot more going on in this city than there has been before. But again, we fought this for decades and decades and decades. Our city is a victim of an image crisis. It's always been an image crisis, whether we were the arson city back in the 70s, a crime city, it's this, it's that. We need everybody outside of the borders of Holyoke to understand that this city is a great city. When I was in office in the 90s, my slogan was pride and progress. We always had pride in our city. We would always move forward. My wife, Deb, grew up in Westfield. She moved back first time in January. She's like, this is not what I thought Holyoke was. I said, nobody understands what it is like that. Part of the job of the mayor is marketing this community, getting out there and letting people know what it's all about. But I would certainly say for anyone coming out of college, there's no reason to live in any other city in the Pioneer Valley rather than Holyoke, as long as we can keep those young people employed. And on that note, one last thing is, the other thing that I used to do on a regular basis is meet with the mayors of the other larger cities here in the Pioneer Valley. We had a regional approach to everything, whether it was a new manufacturer, it was anything going on, like Chicopee might have had a better parcel than we did for something. We would try to work together to do it, guaranteeing that Holyoke people had a shot at the job too. There's got to be a regional approach moving forward.
I would tell college kids to come back and run for mayor, but I'm not done yet. That's a really important question, and one that's come up often, not just in cities like Holyoke, but cities all across the country, called the brain drain, a difficult challenge of young people, college-educated young people, then having to leave our urban centers to find jobs in New England. We've tried to laser focus on leveraging, again, the Massachusetts Green High-Performance Computing Center. We've taken site control of almost every parcel that abuts the computing center to be able to market that in an effective way, partnering with MIT, Harvard, Boston University, Cisco, and EMC to make sure we are marketing the Holyoke to art, technology, and innovation-related companies in the city of Holyoke. One of our biggest challenges currently that we can take advantage of the educated college graduates is the lack of employees that new companies are getting in the city. And so oftentimes we'll have an IT or an engineering firm looking to come to Holyoke. We have a new IT company moving in from Northampton, Veritech IT, later this month. And one of their challenges is finding mid-level technicians, IT folks, to fill those jobs. And so what we do is we bring everybody around the table, the president of Holyoke Community College, Mike Malone, the assistant chancellor at UMass Amherst, because Holyoke, we want to let them know we're willing to develop a training program specific to your company to make sure you have a consistent funnel of employees, because this isn't just about economic development, it's also about workforce development, making sure we have a pipeline, a conveyor belt of employees filling those positions. And so we want educators at the table, we want business folks at the table, we want everyone at the table to make sure that we're marketing our city in a comprehensive and holistic approach. I also think, Holyoke, we're coming from the paper city to the maker city, and our focus on the creative economy has been a return to people making things again, be it manufacturing. You'd be surprised if you walk through the downtown and went into some of these companies and actually what they're selling all across the country. The Super Bowl programs, the shiny cover that they have made right here at Hazen Paper, it's that type of innovation that we need to unveil in the city of Holyoke that's happening right here that we should be very proud of.
Okay. Our next question starts off with Alex. How do you see the role of art and culture in the revitalization of Holyoke?
I think it has no role. No, I'm kidding. That's been a main focus of my administration. I think early on, it was April of 2012, when I was invited with 3 other mayors across the state, which was a great honor to represent Holyoke. And I see some folks in the room. We brought a delegation of 10 to 15 folks, and members of our local cultural council, down to Lowell, which is a former mill city that's really used creative placemaking as a catalyst for economic renaissance in the downtown. And so I came back from that conference really fired up and energized about the role of creative placemaking in cities like Holyoke, because our jobs as mayor are, it's incredibly difficult to think about expanding our tax bases, creating new jobs, but by using traditional models. And so my job is to make sure we think creatively about how to create new jobs in a sustainable manner. I came back and proposed before the City Council a position called a Creative Economy Industries Coordinator. The City Council, thanks to 11-4, voted with me to create that position. And later this month, September 24th, will be the one-year anniversary of that position. At the time, a lot of folks said, what's art, what's culture going to do for the city? It's a waste of taxpayer funds. It's a waste of $40,000, many said. And we're happy to report today that we've received over $150,000 in grant money related to creative economy because of that position. We just got a $75,000 grant last week to bolster the Creative Arts Center, offer more classes, and make the director full-time. And so that's a strategic investment that's going to set Holyoke apart from other Western Mass communities. Many of you in this room, I've seen you at arts events in the downtown, pop-up restaurants in the old bank building, pop-up art galleries and vacant storefronts on High Street, creative networking events at Paper City Brewery, new arts companies on Ray Street, Gateway City Arts. You may notice a new sign if you're going down Ray Street, an event coming up next weekend. Every weekend in Holyoke, almost every night, there's something happening. And so I urge folks who don't go downtown often to check out holyoke.org and just get a glimpse of all the exciting things happening around the creative economy in the city of Holyoke.
Well, I support all that the current administration is doing, pursuing the arts and the cultural portions of developing Holyoke. I do not think that that alone is going to turn downtown Holyoke around. There is one piece of the pie that I'm a big supporter of, and I see Kathy McKeon here at the Victory Theater. I think that's probably going to be the piece that's going to turn downtown Holyoke around from the cultural and arts place. If anybody has had the opportunity to listen to what's been going on with that, what they're looking at, the potential spin-off development, the kinds of shows they're going to bring in, that could actually be the thing you need. I totally appreciate everything Alex and the current administration is trying to do, but those are all small pieces, and you still need that big chunk. And whether it's his administration, mine, anything and everything we can do to bring the Victory Theater forward, they are almost to the finish line. And just imagine having, A+ Broadway performances coming up here to Holyoke instead of having to drive down to the city. The volume of people that would come in, the life you would bring to downtown is enormous. And during my administration, I looked at things a little bit differently. I wasn't looking at it arts and culture. I noticed that we had another asset here that we weren't capitalizing on, and that was the Latino population. I did everything I could to turn downtown Holyoke into the Latino business hub of Western Massachusetts, secured a $100,000 grant from the federal government to turn a Latino business micro center together on the corner of High Street and Dwight Street, which just started during the end of my administration. I'd still like to pursue that as well. We have to look at what we have, capitalize on it, and again, work it in with the image so the rest of Western Massachusetts and the region knows who we are.
Again, about the importance of the creative economy in the city. The city is just about to wrap up an intense analysis. We contracted with a couple people to get an inventory of everybody who views himself as a creative person or someone as a member of the creative economy to, again, assess the impact, the number of jobs, and the level of investment that the creative economy has on the city of Holyoke. And I couldn't agree with Danny more. The creative economy is just one of many facets in our economic development strategy. The role of government isn't to do everything to create jobs. The role of government is what strategic investments and decisions can we make to spur private investment, to make people like you buy homes here, to make people in the private sector move their business here. And so a few public investments. Number one, starting this fall, the construction of a passenger rail platform for the restoration of train service on the corner of Main Street and Dwight Street so that a year from now you can go up north to Montreal or down south to New York City. Phase 2 of the Canal Walk, after many years of waiting, happening on Ray Street between Dwight and Appleton. A $1.4 million renovation of Veterans Park, a $300,000 skate park. None of those investments at any cost to local taxpayers out of the city budget, but borne by grants that our administration has gone after.
I think the only thing I want to say there is I just want to make sure when we're talking about some of the developments that Alex just mentioned that we give credit where credit's due, and I know that Mayor Pluta's administration and Mayor Sullivan's administration actually secured a lot of the funding for many of the particular projects that were just mentioned. Thanks.
It's kind of a good segue to the last discussion there. I'd like you each to name 2 downtown properties either buildings or parcels whose redevelopment you see as crucial to the city's revitalization efforts? Why do you believe each is important? And what can the city do to facilitate private development of each of those properties?
I can't say I came to tonight's debate with 2 downtown properties on my list of notes, but quite frankly, I would say the first one, which I think has a lot of potential, I don't know the exact name of it, but it is the one all the way along the Connecticut River when you come over the bridge from South Hadley, separated by the canal. We have developers that have already been clearing those. One gentleman actually got hurt, I believe, falling down at the time, and bricks fell on him. But that particular parcel, once it's cleared, is right on the Connecticut River. It has a tremendous amount of potential and possibility, and I believe when we are able to get any property downtown in an urban city like this, where some investors or developers come in and clear them, we have to jump at the opportunity. The other one, which I think is realistic right now, I know it's already in the work, but I want to applaud him, is Dennis Walsh and the redevelopment of the old Holyoke Catholic High School. Seeing something like that happen, I actually worked for him in high school when he was redeveloping the Caledonian building on High Street, and it's still one of the most beautiful office buildings in downtown Holyoke, and I will always be a fan of restoring the historic structures if we can do that. But otherwise, during my administration, I was a fan also of tearing down buildings that could not be saved. I will always love the bricks of Holyoke and try to save as many things as we can. But when it comes to the cost effectiveness, if you can actually do that, I just want to see things come down. If they're not viable, put something new up. But if it's viable at all and we can find the resources to do it, let's do it. But again, I think when you look at the Victory Theater, you look at the redevelopment of Holyoke Catholic High School, there's a lot of options downtown.
Just so you know, the owner of the property over the bridge is Glenn Shealy and it's Quantum Properties, and we're working very closely with them to redevelop that parcel in downtown Holyoke, and they're a great developer. They're making it site ready for someone out of town, hopefully, to acquire that property. And then Holyoke Catholic, I'm looking forward to later this month, putting a shovel in the ground to turn that into 55 apartments right in the heart of downtown Holyoke, across the street from our new park, Veterans Park, and also across the street from the new John Oliver Intermodal Center. 2 properties that come to mind right away that we've been working on in the past 2 years. And this all goes around a strategy of having site-ready properties. And I alluded before of a 10-point plan to take advantage of the computing center investment. And one of those is having site-ready properties. 2 big sites in the downtown are, number 1, the huge mill building adjacent to 101 Cabot, the residential lofts, the old Far Alpaca mill. And so there's an agency called Mass Development on the state level that provides municipalities up to $2 million to do cleanup if at the brownfield. The city can't demolish a building until we clean up the brownfield inside that property, and we don't expect the developer to bear the brunt of that cost. And so we have to take advantage of every resource available to the city to make it site ready. And so we've already brought Mass Development through that property. About 3 months into my administration, we actually took ownership of that building because it's important, because it's directly across the canal from the computing center. We've already seen interest in that parcel. And so that's one we're already working on in the pipeline. Number 2, I would also say the Parsons site on Sargent Street. We've also engaged Mass Development in that project, again, applying for up to $2 million to help us clean up that site because, number 1, the city can't afford it. Number 2, we want that site to be ready, be it for commercial, be it for industrial or residential. And so, again, going back to the urban renewal plan, we have specific plans for these properties. We're doing what we can, and we've laid a really strong foundation to make sure we can take actionable items on those properties in the coming months and in the coming years.
The next question will go to Alex. We're going to switch back to schools. How will you get us more money for our schools, for your schools, which I don't live in Holyoke actually. How will you get more money for your schools as next term?
Well, I don't think it matters if it's our schools or their schools. The point is, it's everybody's schools because our students are our future workforce, not only in Holyoke, but in Springfield and in Westfield, all across Western Massachusetts, and all across the country, to be honest. I mean, the problem with the United States is that we're falling behind a lot of modernized countries across the world, and I think we've put an intense focus on STEM-related careers, science, technology, engineering, math. We had Charlene Mahoney, our Director of Math Education, at our school committee meeting last night, reporting to us the progress of implementing a new math program about a year ago, and just to see the preliminary results and sort of the success there is something we want to continue to replicate. I think, number one, yes, it's about the resources, but number two, it's about how we allocate and spend the resources we already have. To be frank, I'm very tired of folks saying we can't do anything with our current data around our graduation rates, our literacy rates, because we don't have enough money. Well, we have enough money. It's a matter of how are we spending it? Do we have high enough expectations for our students? Are we expecting them to fail the minute they walk in the room because they happen not to have two parents at home, or they happen to come from poverty, or they happen to live in the flats? And I think we have to expect that every kid, when they walk through the public schools, they should be getting the best education possible. I want to commend Dr. Paul Hyrie, our new assistant superintendent, for starting the full-service community school model at Peck School. And the basic premise of that model is to make sure that the school is meeting the basic needs of students that families are not meeting, to make sure that when they go into the class, they can actually learn and get results. We've replicated that at Kelly, we've done it to Morgan, and we want to bring it district-wide, and we're seeing results in that sense. We are continuing to advocate for more funds, working with our state delegation. State Representative Aaron Bega has been a big advocate for education funding for the schools. Former State Senator Mike Knappich was a great friend to the school committee and to the school department. And again, I'm optimistic we'll continue to go after grants to fund the important work of making sure all our kids are educated and they have a level playing field entering the workforce.
This is an issue that I feel is very important, and quite frankly is one of the issues that really pushed me to get into this race. Back on St. Patrick's Month, back in March, the Holyoke Chamber of Commerce hosts their breakfast, and all I heard for weeks afterwards was how Senate President Therese Murray was the guest speaker. And it's not every day that the Senate President comes to Holyoke. And before she got up and gave her remarks, our mayor got up and left, and irritated her beyond belief. I heard that from weeks coming from people I know down in Boston. One of the most important jobs the mayor of a city who is dependent upon the legislature for money is lobbyist in chief. I will say that at least once every other week I would travel down to Boston just to meet with people, not just our own delegation who we know is already working on our behalf, but everybody else, maintaining those connections, making sure they know what our needs are. Again, 40-something million the first time it's out from the federal government. How does that happen? You have to have relationships in place already. And I do think that's something where the current administration has not lived up to par whatsoever. We are reliant. If you understand the finances of this city, if we only raise $30, $40 million locally, where's the rest of it coming from? It's over 90% of our school budget comes from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And when the question is asked, where are we going to get more funding? Where do you think? It's either going to be there or in Washington. And I was also an active member of the United States Conference of Mayors, because just like in Boston, you have to be there, you have to show your face time, you have to let them know that you're interested. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I just think that's something that's not happening enough right now.
Over the past couple of years, Chapter 70 education aid, which is unrestricted aid to education, has actually increased to the city, both thanks to Governor Deval Patrick and thanks to both the state Senate and the state legislature. And that's because we continue to advocate for funding. But again, we've gotten a number of grants. We just, as I said, wrapped up a $6.3 million science lab project at Dean Vocational High School to make sure we have a quality STEM education program happening at Dean. We've also applied with the Mass School Building Authority to do an assessment of McMahon School over off Homestead Road, because we have some overcrowding issues at that school, and so we also have that school in the pipeline for an expansion to make sure the quality of education in that neighborhood improves for those kids. And also because the city has what's called 2 level 4 schools. Dean Vocational High School is a level 4 high school, and then Morgan Elementary is also level 4. Because of that designation, we've been able to apply and receive additional funds to make sure we can both afford to extend the school day by paying teachers to stay an extra hour, to make sure we're doing extra supplemental support services, extra tutoring at that school, and also at Dean Vocational High School.
Gentlemen, a lot has been said tonight about open parcels of land in the city of Holyoke, mill buildings that have a lot of potential, as the former mayor just said, for redevelopment. What can be done in city government to make sure that this potential that's present in Holyoke does not present opportunities just for outside developers, but for all the people of Holyoke, and particularly the neediest constituencies in Holyoke.
Well, again, I'm going to point across the street because you have a lot of people in Holyoke who don't have the resources to go out and invest. So the whole concept of mixed use, whether it's residential, you're adding in a business portion for small businesses, anything that we can do with state, local, or federal resources to get mixed use, I think is the only way that things would work that way. Again, the problem is how creative can you be in a local community where you barely raise enough money to sustain yourself with basic services? That's where you have to go out. You have to be very vocal at the state level, very vocal at the federal level, but you also have to be very creative. During my last year in office, I believe it was passed afterwards, I kept pressing the legislature to pass legislation so that when you clear off a parcel of land, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have accrued in back taxes can be wiped away. I don't know how many people would come in and say, I just bought the block on the corner of Pleasant Street and so forth for $20,000, and they thought it was a win. They didn't realize there was $400,000 in tax liens against it. Well, naturally, no one is going to pay that off to redevelop the property, and unless and until that whole scheme gets fixed as well, you want to clear the properties, you want to make sure you can wipe away the prior debt if it is non-collectible and get it back active on the tax rolls. That was, and I still think is, a massive problem in the city of Holyoke, and that's one that we can't control locally.
This is a good question. I think the question points to sort of our ability to grow and also respect the folks that are already in the city of Holyoke, be it residents or businesses. And so what it means to me is making sure we grow and develop and expand in a way that respects different populations in the city of Holyoke. It's sort of what we call smart growth, and I'll allude again to the urban renewal plan. 90% of the parcels in our urban renewal plan are vacant or abandoned parcels. And so our sweeping urban renewal plan is not a plan to displace people, not a plan to move people out of their neighborhood or from where they live. Is a strategic plan to make sure that we have diverse neighborhoods in downtown Holyoke. Number one, our commitment to a quality renovation and rehabilitation of Lyman Terrace, be it partial selective demolition, renovating both the interiors and exteriors as part of a broader strategy to increase income and housing diversity in the downtown. It's a couple blocks from the new Holyoke Catholic that'll kick off later this month. We also, in conjunction with the City Council, passed what's called the Holyoke Housing Development Incentive Program. And it's the first tax incentive for developers to build market rate housing in downtown gateway cities. And Holyoke was the first city to approve that locally. It was approved 15-0, and we know that there's plenty of tax incentives and subsidies to build affordable housing in our communities, but we also need to be able to attract folks that have more disposable income in their pockets to support a small business community. We want to see a diverse set of people living in the downtown, and so now we can offer to developers and property owners a tax incentive to make sure they're building market rate units, that the rents align with what we would call market rate. Along with Lyman Terrace, Holyoke Catholic, and other empty parcels, we're confident we can have a diverse population in the downtown. We also want opportunities for advancement, families moving from public housing into home ownership, and we don't want folks to leave the city once they become more economically stable. We've launched what's called Buy Holyoke Now, an array of housing incentives, be it the $5,000 down payment assistance through the city, also working with the NIP program, the Neighborhood Improvement Program, giving people a 50% rebate to do roofs or house or window improvements at their homes, and that's also targeted towards residents.
I think the last thing I'm going to say again regarding this issue and the other ones is I understand the mayor's rattling off a variety of programs, but I just need everybody to make sure those were around 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 20 years ago. One thing you have to understand about government, city, state, or federal, it goes slowly, slowly, slowly. There are things that I started that kicked in 2 years ago, and I just want everybody to understand that a lot of people, besides Mayor Morse, myself, put a lot of hard work into a lot of the successes that both of us are talking about tonight.
All right, that reaches the end of the question part. Adrian's actually going to be the one closing the program, so he will do so after the closing statements. I just want to take a moment and thank you for allowing me into your city to moderate this debate. Each of you will have 1 minute, and so we'll start off with Alex.
Thank you, Matt. Again, thank you, Mr. Soskovich, for agreeing to participate in the debate, and also thank you to Adrian and the independent media panel for being here tonight, and most importantly, thank all of you for participating in the democratic process. I think an educated voter is the most important thing we can have here in the city of Holyoke. I ran for this position 2 years ago because I believe that people had quietly given up on the city of Holyoke. They had resigned themselves to a unsafe, dead downtown, a community that people will continue to point their fingers at, and I think in a short amount of time. And things do take time, but I think, and I can say with confidence, that we have laid a strong foundation for strong economic development growth in the city of Holyoke. We've made strategic decisions, and we won't agree on everything. We never will. And there probably would be a few things I would do differently. But I think the question to ask is, are we moving in the right direction, and are we better off than we were 2 years ago? And I can say with confidence we are. We're moving in the right direction, and we need to continue the momentum. And I'm counting on each and every one of you to help my administration in that effort to make Holyoke the place we know it can be. And so I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, September 17th. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank all of you who sponsored this event tonight, everyone that came out tonight for a biased event. I need to redefine what the term bias means, because this seemed pretty open, fair, and reasonable to me every step of the way. I noticed it was the youngest mayor with the former youngest mayor. We've got this little thing going on here, but I commend Alex for all the work that he has done in the last 2 years. I've seen him work really, really hard, and he certainly has his heart in the right place. But I think in tonight's debate, I think if you watch the other debate that'll air Sunday at noon, and in some of the other pieces in the news and so forth, there are differences, and I just think everybody needs to think about those, and Holyoke is at a critical point. It's not about sound bites, it's not about rhetoric. It's about, is Holyoke going to succeed, or is Holyoke going to end up like Detroit in receivership or bankruptcy soon? It's that serious right now, and I ask all of you, you're here tonight, be an educated voting force, look at the issues, and please consider me on the 17th. Thank you.